Hello, my name is Jonathan Stone, and I will be giving a reading lesson analysis for the Sonlight Homeschool Language Arts curriculum for kindergarten. Literature-based homeschooling is an educational philosophy based on children's natural curiosity and love for stories. Literature-based homeschooling is a highly academic approach that uses outstanding books and delightful stories as the centerpiece for learning. Real books make learning come alive, and these stories give context to the information, creates an emotional connection with students, and help the readers retain the information. The lesson plans are written a week at a glance and include integrated subject matter. In this week's lesson, the oral language instruction is combined with mathematics. In the instructor's guide, there's a quote that says, "You are probably taught language arts in a traditional way, using workbooks and repetition. Sonlight does not teach language arts this way. Our research revealed that traditional methods, while comfortable, produced inferior results and were boring." I guess today, as we put the Sonlight curriculum under a microscope, we'll discover if this is the case. The lesson that I've chose to analyze today is week 7. In the preceding lessons, they've learned the letters F, B, M, T, R, and A. Here's a close-up of the week 7 daily lesson plan, scope, and sequence. As we open up and see the details of this lesson plan, it's only on 2 pages and it covers 5 days of content. I had to do a little digging to find out exactly what are they doing to really build phonetical awareness. As we dive into the description of the phonological skills, I found the following quote: "While phonetics is helpful in reading, it is more helpful in spelling. Your children will practice phonetic spelling patterns not only in the various language arts workbooks, but also coupled with an introduction to basic punctuation rules in the handwriting and dictation exercises." I find that Sonlight's approach to teaching phonological skills is a little less assertive than other curriculums. It happens in their curriculum, but it doesn't seem to be intentional, and it certainly doesn't seem to be explicitly and systematically taught. The first day's lessons begins with some practice to develop the children's motor skills. I imagine that in previous lessons they have gone over the phonetical sound of the letter A. It's implied that the teacher would continue to reinforce this and the phoneme-grapheme connection in this part of the lesson, but it's not outlined in the actual lesson plan. In the next part of the lesson, day 1, we see that there's some copy work. The instructions say slowly break down the words am, bam, and a rat by their sounds as your children read them with you. Have your children write them on the week 7 activity sheet. Have your children read them again. This short paragraph is the extent of what it's telling the instructor to actually do with their child as they're exploring these words am, bat, and a rat. They're hearing the short A sound in am, bam, and rat. They're also hearing the schwa sound in a. But this is not described, it's not distinguished, where they can really practice and break down why these sounds are different. On day 2, they then have these 2 worksheets available for them to complete. This emphasizes the correlation between the short A sound, the lowercase letter A, and the association with things that start with the letter A. This approach, although it might be enjoyable for some of the students, I feel like it distracts. To find out how to say a word, you look at the picture clues, you look at the world around you, look at things other than the word itself. This activity, though it might be fun and enjoyable for the child, is probably not the best activity to teach the phonological skills required at this age. Day 2, they continue their copy work, underline 2 words that rhyme, am and bam, introduce the word rhyme. When 2 words rhyme, it means their endings sound the same. Hiking rhymes with liking, mad rhymes with dad, red rhymes with bed, which rhymes with head. Remember, the endings need not be spelled similarly in order to rhyme. They only need to sound the same. Again, this is limited in its explanation. Instead of addressing various spelling patterns with the same sound, it simply is just brushed under the rug in this kind of a sense. They're to circle the word where the letter A sounds different from the others. Put a box around the animal and put a squiggly line under the words that end with the sound. Although this helping them to identify and make the connection between the grapheme M and the phoneme M. I don't feel that this is sufficient practice for this particular area. They do it once and then move on. As they continue in the next day's work, they continue to explore the beginning sounds of different words that all end with at, as well as identifying items that start with the a sound. So again, they're really being forced to look at pictures, not at the actual words themselves. In day 4, they begin by drawing a picture of something that starts with the a sound. At this stage, picture cues are less important, and it's more important that they're making the phonological connections between the phonemes that they hear and the graphemes on the page. Day 4, copywork continues, doing the same exercise as day 1, but substituting bat, ram, and mat. And day 5, they're again exploring rhymes, reading the following word pairs: man, can, mat, Sam, bat, cat, pat, fat, ten, hen, and identifying the rhymes in words. This part is valuable, but again, it's very short and sweet. I think there needs to be an additional extension of this lesson to really make it sink in. Next, we're going to look at the strategies that is recommended for instructors to use when children come to difficult words that they don't know. I was very surprised when I saw in the glossary of terms, it says, if your children seem to be having trouble in one of these areas, oral, auditory, visual, and kinesthetic or physical, it may mean you ought to get their hearing, eyes, etc. checked. There's science to explain why children may be struggling with words, and just bringing them to a doctor is not going to help the problem. They need to be taught these words explicitly and systematically, and it's not presented that way in the curriculum. However, I was very pleased to find that what is presented in the curriculum are some instructions on how to make Play-Doh. I was thinking about Tolman's hourglass and how there's such a progression from phonological awareness and building upon early basic and advanced processes of manipulating those sounds, and then connecting each individual sound to a particular grapheme, and then building into more complex forms, graphemes, digraphs, trigraphs, vowel teams, to really understand and develop the orthography that comes in partnership with the phonological awareness that they are learning. And this is developing the proper pathways in the brain. But this curriculum doesn't do this. Instead, I've seen cases where it just presents an onset or a rhyme and then immediately connects it to a morpheme, and that's the end of the conversation. It doesn't follow this proper hourglass to really nail in place those early processes to develop those neural pathways in the brain to form the correct pathways to decode words in the future. Next, I want to showcase some of the type of text that students are expected to read in this course. In the instructor's guide, it says, though we have wanted to maintain a low-key approach in language arts, many parents and children are anxious to read. We try to follow a middle ground between the extremes of pushing early learning and following the research that indicates children will do just fine if they don't read until they are in 3rd grade or later. You will find we recommend many kinesthetic, hands-on active learning experiences throughout the year. We are firmly convinced that the more ways in which children can interact with their environments, the more thoroughly, rapidly, and joyfully they will learn the material. I did appreciate that there is exposure to a lot of different real books that are out there the parents are reading with their children through the course of this curriculum. They've also provided this first picture dictionary where the children are able to do a lot of activities to interact with this dictionary, learning new words and their meanings. And then there's a whole set of books called Fun Tales, where students get to actually read books that are sequenced according to the very letters that they've learned in the curriculum. The first book in the series is Pam. As you can see on the back side of the cover of this book covers the first few letters that they've learned up to this point. F, B, M, T, R, A, H, P, and S. Pam, bat, Pam bats, bam. The needs of struggling readers are not addressed specifically in this book, but they are addressed generally in some of the front and back matter of the curriculum. Sonlight's language arts program is based on the natural learning approach. Natural or integrated learning means students learn by discovery. They observe, analyze, and then seek to imitate what they have seen a master wordsmith do before them. If you feel like your children just seem to be struggling or overwhelmed with their work, don't hesitate to put some books away and simply wait a while. Instead, spend more time on your read-alouds and simply continue to encourage a love for reading. In a few months, try again, and you will probably find that allowing a little extra time for your children to grow made success easier for them to attain. If your children are struggling in learning to read, please relax. Your children will learn to read when they are ready. Many boys learn to read at age 7.5. Don't push, but use these years to read together and enjoy talking with your kids. It's okay to use more time to finish this program. When these young readers are learning to read and they begin to struggle, this curriculum really emphasizes this natural learning by discovery, hoping that that will be what helps these readers become successful. I do appreciate that this does not force children to keep working and reading if they are in a place where they are having a little meltdown, but I do feel that there is a window of time that children need to build these neural pathways in their brain, and we might not see the real true source of their struggling until years later, but the time to fix those problems is actually before they occur. In conclusion, I want to just compare some of the highlights of the Sonlight reading lesson and how they compare to the science of reading. The Sonlight reading lesson uses informal, casual instruction, whereas the science of reading really enforces using explicit, systematic instruction. In this Sonlight reading lesson, it's suggesting the use of the 3 cueing system, emphasizing sight word memorization, whereas when we look at the science of reading, sequencing instruction is based on Tolman's hourglass and on these proven methods to really connect phonemes to digraphs. In the Sonlight reading lesson, it discourages addressing irregular spellings. In one particular case where there was a comparison of rhyming words and the third rhyming word had a different spelling, it was just kind of pushed under the rug and said, oh, it's okay, they all sound the same. Whereas in the science of reading, it really encourages exploring word etymology. And when you find a word that doesn't fit the pattern, you dig into it and you discover it all the more. Fortunately, both the Science of Reading and Sonlight reading lesson encourage the use of integrated subject area instruction. I appreciated that in the handwriting lessons, there were lessons really building those early motor skills that are required for handwriting. I loved how the Sonlight reading lesson developed a love for literacy, which I think is supported in the Science of Reading. Establishing those neural pathways right from the beginning in explicit systematic instruction will then allow the child to develop that love for literacy that they need. And building the student-teacher relationship was really highlighted in the Sonlight reading lesson, which I appreciated, and I feel that that relationship is so critical as children are learning to read. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this presentation of the analysis of this particular reading lesson will be helpful to anyone viewing this presentation.